In hindsight, propaganda always seems obvious. Today, when we look at the posters, films, and cartoons from World War II and the Cold War, the intentions behind them are clearly visible. The emotions being played upon and the symbolism used are unmistakable. It's evident that these are forms of propaganda. 20 years after the start of the Iraq War, we can see the Bush era through a similar lens. Statements from that time claimed Iraq was hostile towards America and supported terrorism. The regime was said to threaten peace with weapons of mass destruction, including anthrax, nerve gas, and nuclear arms. Such rhetoric painted Iraq and its terrorist allies as part of an axis of evil, posing a global threat. However, today it is known that Saddam Hussein never possessed WMDs, was not behind the anthrax attacks, and did not fund al-Qaeda. When we think of propaganda, war and deception often come to mind, attractively packaged messages designed to mobilize people for conflict. But propaganda is not always so dramatic. It often thrives in more mundane forms. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, propaganda is the spread of information, facts, arguments, rumors, half-truths, or lies intended to influence public opinion. In a less sensationalist sense, much of what is termed propaganda is simply influential rhetoric or advertising. Propaganda does not have to be deceptive, government-issued, or related to war or foreign adversaries. However, the term propaganda is often misunderstood. Edward Bernays, considered the father of modern public relations in the 1920s, defined propaganda as the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses. Unlike Bernays, who viewed this manipulation as beneficial to democratic society, most people see it negatively. Bernays believed democracy was about managing society through invisible governors because he thought the general population was too ignorant or violent to make decisions, except during elections with a few chosen candidates. He advocated for subtle public relation strategies to guide society instead of overt control. Returning to the present, although Bernays have long passed, neo-liberalism has refined propaganda into influential rhetoric. Rather than overtly focusing on foreign adversaries or opposing ideologies, modern neoliberal rhetoric subtly influences perceptions of personal identity. Neoliberalism, more so than previous forms of capitalism, pervades nearly every aspect of life with its jargon and ideology. It effectively fortifies itself without openly resorting to violence. While neoliberalism is indeed violent, its control mechanisms are often nearly invisible. Through a combination of rhetoric and economic policy, neoliberalism shapes individuals' habits and beliefs to align with its objectives, effectively creating neoliberal subjects. This form of capitalism is frequently misunderstood due to figures like Reagan, Thatcher, Friedman, and Hayek, who championed small government. The common perception of neoliberalism involves reduced government size and increased corporate power. However, in reality, neoliberalism entails substantial government involvement, albeit differently. Historically, welfare state capitalism served as a safety valve for capitalists by mitigating market-induced inequality and poverty. In contrast, neoliberalism approaches the issue from the perspective that the general populace poses the problem. Consequently, neoliberal policies require significant government intervention to ensure that supposed free markets function properly. These policies aim to alter societal behavior by integrating market practices and logic into all facets of life. As Margaret Thatcher famously stated, "Economics is the method, the object is to change the soul." In practical terms, neoliberal logic manifests in policies such as increased incarceration, tying welfare and healthcare to employment, criminalizing poverty and homelessness, enhancing state and corporate surveillance, creating new property rights like intellectual property, using international sanctions and military interventions to promote open markets, bailing out private enterprises during financial crises, and redefining corporations as individuals with extensive rights. The myth of a naturally existing free market is contradicted by neoliberal efforts to construct and maintain their vision through state power, thereby increasing market interactions across daily life. Understanding propaganda under neoliberalism necessitates recognizing its role in supporting these policies, making them more acceptable, and fostering a market society where capitalist thinking prevails. For instance, non-market entities are redefined in market terms or stigmatized. Political campaigns promise to manage nations like businesses, embodying the neoliberal ideal. Welfare programs are disparaged as handouts while recipients are labeled as indolent. Government policies, except for military spending, undergo rigorous cost-benefit analysis, as though all benefits can be monetarily quantified. Despite government's funding capabilities, success is measured by budget adherence and economic health rather than policy impacts, popularity, or implementation efficiency. The economy often prioritizes capitalist profits. Outside state control, political movements like strikes are viewed mainly through a cost-benefit lens, as seen with CNN's coverage of last fall's railroad workers' strike, discussing it as a $2 billion daily expense. This perspective extends from the neoliberal core. Neoliberal societies frequently equate markets with democracy or freedom, framing nationalized companies as authoritarian compared to free markets. Neoliberals often misunderstand and dislike democracy, portraying markets, with their power disparities, as places where democracy thrives because consumers vote with dollars. Yet this ignores the fact that some individuals and corporations have billions of votes while others have none. The term economy often refers to capitalist profits. Outside of the state, political movements like strikes are often analyzed for their cost-effectiveness. For example, CNN discussed the railroad workers' strike last fall, mainly in terms of its $2 billion per day expense, prompting viewers to question whether better working conditions were worth the economic impact. In neoliberal societies, markets are often linked with democracy and freedom, a narrative promoted by political figures and tech leaders alike. Nationalized companies are portrayed as authoritarian, contrasting with the perceived freedom of free markets. The idea is that true freedom is achieved when private enterprises control resources like oil refineries. Friedrich Hayek, an advocate for small government and neoliberalism, proposed a form of government where the upper legislative house would only permit men of substantial property over the age of 45 to vote or be elected. Additionally, no political parties would be allowed, and each member would serve a 15-year term. These guys have no clue about what democracy and freedom are, but they're not shy about co-opting these terms and the positive values they carry. To them, freedom means giving corporations permission to do anything they want, so long as they can generate profit. It means giving consumers the freedom to buy any one of 50 different brands of toothpaste, even as their boss cuts their pay. Meanwhile, their government is run by wealthy old men who hold power for decades. The influence of the market extends beyond government policies and politics, deeply affecting our daily lives. Hobbies turn into side hustles, and dating becomes a marketplace. Neoliberal thinker Gary Becker argued that wealthier men deserved polygamy due to their business success. This logic is echoed by politicians like Macron and motivational accounts urging everyone to become entrepreneurs. The entrepreneur is seen as the ideal neoliberal subject. Business entrepreneurs are praised by neoliberals, and their lifestyle is promoted by politicians and successful business people. Neoliberal propaganda often includes courses that promise freedom through financial success, emphasizing personal responsibility. This message persists despite political actions that make achieving success more difficult.